In early 1984, Commodore looked almost untouchable. Its Commodore 64 was moving through department stores, electronics chains, bedrooms, schools, and living rooms at a scale few personal computers had ever reached. Parents who saw computers as expensive business equipment could finally bring one home. Children loaded games from cassette tapes and floppy disks, typed programs from magazines, and discovered that changing a few lines of code could change what happened on the screen. Competitors were being pulled into a brutal price war that Commodore seemed uniquely built to survive. Jack Tramiel's promise of computers for the masses, not the classes, no longer sounded like a slogan. It looked like victory. Then, at the height of that victory, Tramiel left. A power struggle involving Commodore chairman and financier Irving Gould ended with the company's driving force outside the empire he had built. Within months, Tramiel would take control of Atari's consumer business, recruit people from his former organization, and return as a direct competitor. Commodore had conquered the home computer market, but it was entering its most important battle without the man who had shaped its strategy. How could a company lose its founder when it appeared strongest? Had the damage begun with his departure, or much earlier? And how could a company that would soon own one of the decade's most advanced personal computers still disappear before the personal computer revolution had fully matured? Commodore did not vanish because it never found success. It vanished after reaching a level of success most technology companies never see. To understand how, the story has to move backward, before the blue startup screen, the brown keyboard, and the bedrooms filled with joysticks. Jack Tramiel was born in Poland and survived the Holocaust. After the war, he immigrated to the United States, served in the United States Army, and learned to repair office equipment. He later built a business around typewriters and other office machines. His suffering should not be used as a simple explanation for every decision he made, but certain qualities became visible throughout his career. Survival, control, low costs, independence from suppliers, and an intense refusal to appear weak. Commodore moved from typewriters into adding machines and then calculators. Each transition offered a new future, and each brought a new threat. In calculators, Commodore depended on semiconductor companies for the chips inside its products. That became dangerous when chip suppliers began selling their own calculators and driving prices down. A company could build a product and a distribution network, then discover that the supplier controlling its most important component could enter the same market with a lower cost. Tramiel's answer was to control more of the supply chain. Commodore acquired MOS Technology, the semiconductor company associated with the low-cost 6502 processor. The deal brought manufacturing capacity, chip expertise, and engineers such as Chuck Peddle. Peddle understood that inexpensive processors were opening a market far larger than calculators. The future was a computer that an individual could own. The Commodore PET became the first major proof. Introduced in the same broad moment as the Apple II and Radio Shack's TRS-80, it was not the only machine pushing personal computing forward, but it looked like a complete product. Its display, keyboard, electronics, and cassette storage were assembled into one integrated system. Buyers did not need to imagine a pile of boards becoming a computer. Commodore also had manufacturing experience and an established business. The PET was more than a clever prototype. It could be produced and sold at scale. Yet the PET still belonged mainly to schools, businesses, enthusiasts, and early adopters. For most families, a computer remained unfamiliar and expensive. The next step was not simply more power, it was making the machine feel obtainable. That idea became the VIC-20. It had limited memory, a narrow display, and obvious technical constraints, but it was affordable, approachable, and marketed beyond specialist computer dealers. William Shatner appeared in advertisements asking why consumers should buy only a video game when they could own a computer. The VIC-20 could sit near televisions, appliances, and entertainment products. A family did not always have to enter an intimidating computer shop and learn a new language before making a purchase. The strategy worked. The VIC-20 became the first computer to pass 1 million sales. Commodore had found a formula: own important technology, manufacture at scale, lower the price, sell through mainstream retail, and turn computing into something an ordinary household could consider. But the formula contained a dangerous question. What happens when the weapon that creates a market also begins damaging the margins, companies, and relationships needed to sustain it? And if you enjoy this kind of documentary, consider subscribing. These videos take a lot of time to produce. There is research, writing, editing, and a lot of work behind each one. This is still a small channel, and every like, every comment, and every subscriber helps the algorithm understand that people want more stories like this. For you, it is only one click, and it is free. For me, it means a lot. The Commodore 64 turned that formula into a cultural event. It offered generous memory for the period, colourful graphics, and a sound chip whose character would remain recognisable decades later. But specifications do not explain what it meant. For many people, the family television became an entrance to an electronic world. A child could load a game, type a program from a magazine, make a mistake, correct it, and slowly understand that the machine was not a sealed appliance. It could be explored. Bedrooms became small laboratories. Friends traded discs and knowledge. User groups formed. Games taught timing and imagination. Programming taught patience. The sound chip gave musicians and developers a palette that felt unusually alive for an inexpensive home computer. One machine could be a game system, homework tool, music box, programming environment, and the beginning of a career. Commodore's vertical integration made the machine especially dangerous to competitors because the company controlled important chip design and production. It could reduce manufacturing costs in ways rivals struggled to match. Lower prices attracted buyers. Buyers attracted software developers. More software made the machine easier to sell. Magazines, accessories, games, demonstrations, clubs, and informal support created an ecosystem that strengthened itself. For a moment, the strategy worked almost too well. Commodore repeatedly cut prices and dragged the market into a fight that damaged rivals, especially Texas Instruments. Consumers benefited from machines that became cheaper with astonishing speed, but retailers watched prices fall. Specialist dealers saw mass-market stores undercut them. Competitors sold hardware at painful losses or withdrew. Commodore moved enormous volume, while a culture built around cost reduction learned to see price as the answer to nearly every problem. Depending on which records and estimates are used, total Commodore 64 sales are placed somewhere from the low teens of millions to roughly 17 million. The exact number remains debated, but the larger point does not. It became one of the most successful individual computer models ever sold. Commodore had proved that a programmable computer could become a mass-market consumer product. The success was hiding something. Commodore knew how to create a hit, force down costs and attack a market. It was less clear whether it knew how to protect relationships, preserve margins, develop stable leadership, or guide millions of customers toward the next generation. A product that sold for years became both treasure and trap. Every successor risked competing with a machine that still generated cash. Inside the company, the aggression that frightened competitors also created tension. Projects competed for attention. Products could be revised to reduce expense. Dealer relationships weakened when mass-market pricing made specialist support harder to sustain. Long-term planning often had to fight immediate savings. None of these problems alone guaranteed failure. Together, they made Commodore dependent on decisive leadership at the moment its leadership fractured. In January of 1984, Jack Tramiel left after a serious conflict with Irving Gould and the power around Commodore's board. Accounts differ over the immediate motives, including financing, control, and the roles Tramiel wanted for members of his family. What is certain is that Commodore lost the executive who had defined its competitive philosophy. Tramiel soon formed a new company and acquired Atari's consumer operations from Warner Communications. So what did Commodore do? After losing the man who had defined its strategy, it did not immediately collapse. Commodore still possessed a famous brand, factories, semiconductor expertise, distribution, cash from successful products, and an enormous installed base. The Commodore 64 remained alive. The future was not doomed. In fact, Commodore was about to acquire something extraordinary. An independent team led by engineers including Jay Miner had been developing a new architecture under the name Amiga. The project began with roots in gaming, then grew into something more ambitious. A central processor worked beside custom chips handling graphics, sound, memory movement, and other specialized tasks. The design promised a computer that could animate, play rich audio, display impressive color, and manage several activities with a fluidity far beyond ordinary home machines. At first, Atari appeared positioned to gain influence over the project through a financial agreement. Then Commodore intervened and acquired Amiga in 1984. Legal disputes followed. The man who had built Commodore now controlled Atari, while Commodore controlled the machine that might define the next generation. The obvious enemy was Atari. The deeper threat was much larger. Commodore had lost the leader who understood how to turn cost control into market conquest. Now it owned technology that required a different skill, patient platform building. The Amiga needed software, developer support, marketing, upgrades, clear positioning, and sustained investment. The question was no longer whether the machine was brilliant. It was whether Commodore could become a different kind of company before the market changed around it. In July of 1985, Commodore presented the Amiga 1000 at Lincoln Center in New York. Andy Warhol appeared on stage with Debbie Harry and used the machine to create a digital portrait. It was memorable because it showed the Amiga not as an office calculator or a toy, but as a creative instrument. Behind the spectacle was genuine substance. The Amiga used the Motorola 68000 processor and custom chips that shared specialized work. Its color graphics and motion looked remarkable. Beside many contemporary personal computers, its 4-channel sampled sound offered more than simple beeps. Its operating system provided a graphical interface and preemptive multitasking, allowing programs to run together in a way that felt unusually modern. It was easy to imagine that Commodore had reached the future early. In some areas, it had. But a demonstration is not an ecosystem. The original Amiga 1000 was expensive beside the mass home computer market Commodore had created. Early software needed refinement. Developers had to learn a new platform. Retailers needed a simple reason to recommend it. Buyers needed confidence that the machine would be supported, improved, and still matter years later. Commodore struggled with the most basic question. What was the Amiga supposed to be? A premium creative computer? A business machine? A video tool? A gaming platform? A home computer? A challenger to the Macintosh and IBM-compatible world? Each identity had evidence behind it. Together they produced confusion. A retailer cannot easily explain a machine with 6 different futures. A customer can admire a product without understanding why it belongs in the home. Commodore did find real success. The lower-cost Amiga 500, introduced in 1987, brought the technology closer to the home market and became the most widely loved Amiga model. In parts of Europe, especially the United Kingdom and Germany, it developed a powerful cultural life. It became a major gaming system, music machine, graphics platform, and center of the demo scene. Young programmers and artists pushed the hardware in ways its manufacturer had never demonstrated. In North America, the story was different. The Amiga found devoted users and important creative roles, but never achieved the same broad identity. Newtek's Video Toaster turned Amiga systems into influential tools for video production and television graphics. Deluxe Paint became a landmark in digital art, yet these successes often existed as separate islands. Video production here, gaming there, music somewhere else, enthusiasts everywhere, but no single message strong enough to make the Amiga a standard choice. That is what makes the failure more painful. The Amiga was not rejected because it had no value. It proved its value repeatedly. Commodore failed to turn scattered success and technical admiration into a durable global platform. After Tramiel, the company struggled to maintain a clear center. Leadership changed, priorities shifted, marketing was inconsistent. Product planning did not always show customers a clean path from one machine to the next. The Commodore 64 continued selling long after its introduction, bringing revenue while reducing the urgency of transition. The old computer became a source of cash and a shadow over everything that followed. The Commodore 128 offered compatibility with the 64 while adding more memory and improved modes, but compatibility revealed the deeper problem. Commodore's largest software ecosystem remained tied to aging technology. Other products, including the Commodore 16 and Plus 4, arrived without the same game compatibility or a compelling reason for existing owners to move. Commodore could still design hardware. It struggled to define a long-term relationship with the customer. Meanwhile, the real antagonist was no longer one rival. IBM-compatible computers were becoming an expanding standard. Different manufacturers could build machines that ran familiar operating systems and software. Businesses understood the ecosystem they were entering. Developers could target a growing market. Retailers could stock systems, accessories, and programs with confidence that the platform would not depend on one company's next decision. Microsoft's influence grew. Hardware improved, prices fell, graphical environments became more practical. At the same time, Nintendo and Sega offered a simpler answer for games. Insert the cartridge and play. Commodore was squeezed between general-purpose computers with enormous compatibility and consoles with a clear entertainment identity. The Amiga could still outperform contemporary systems in specific graphics, sound, and multimedia tasks, but the contest was no longer a simple comparison of features. Commodore owned an integrated proprietary platform. The IBM-compatible world offered continuity across manufacturers. Commodore could create a better demonstration. The larger personal computer market could offer confidence that software, accessories, employers, schools, shops, and manufacturers would continue moving in the same direction. A computer could be ahead and still lose. Customers did not need every rival machine to defeat the Amiga feature by feature. They only needed to believe that a compatible computer would have a safer upgrade path, more software, stronger support, and a future that did not depend on Commodore solving its internal problems. The cracks were visible long before the collapse. Commodore weakened in North America even while Amiga sales remained meaningful in Europe. Hardware improvements arrived slowly. The custom chip architecture that had looked revolutionary in the middle of the 1980s did not advance quickly enough to preserve the same lead. Marketing could not consistently explain whether Commodore represented low-cost nostalgia, serious creativity, home gaming, business computing, or the next multimedia revolution. For a moment, recovery still seemed possible. The Amiga 500 expanded the base. Higher-end systems supported professional work. The Amiga 1200 and Amiga 4000 introduced improved graphics near the end of the company's life. Loyal users kept buying software, and creative communities kept finding uses that made the machines feel special. Commodore also recognized that computing, games, audio, video, and compact discs were beginning to merge. The CD-TV tried to place Amiga technology inside a living room multimedia product. Later, the CD32 aimed directly at the game console market. Once again, Commodore could see a version of the future, but seeing it was not enough. The CD-TV was difficult to position and expensive for the audience it needed. The CD32 entered a market demanding a strong software library, distribution, marketing, and financial stamina. A patent dispute produced an injunction that blocked Commodore from importing products into the United States, damaging the planned American launch. It was a serious blow, but not the single event that destroyed the company. By then, Commodore was already in deep trouble. The failure was structural. Commodore had relied on aging successes without building a replacement engine strong enough to carry the business. It had advanced technology, but not enough money to support it. It had loyal communities, but not enough confidence from the wider market. It had products, but not a coherent roadmap. By the time it needed a hit to survive, it lacked the retailer support, developer momentum, financial strength, and time needed to create one. By the fiscal year ending in 1993, Commodore reported a loss of more than $350 million. Sales were falling, cash was scarce, and the company warned that without new resources and restructuring it could face liquidation. Production and distribution became harder to sustain. Suppliers and creditors had reasons to doubt whether they would be paid. New products could not create revenue quickly enough. Employees faced uncertainty, and development projects risked losing their corporate home. In April of 1994, Commodore began bankruptcy and liquidation. The company that had helped make home computing a mass-market reality stopped operating as a unified force. Its machines remained in millions of homes, games were still being played, and software was still being written. But affection could not repair a balance sheet, finance manufacturing, reassure retailers, or create a stable roadmap. Commodore did not collapse because it lacked innovation. It collapsed because innovation was repeatedly disconnected from long-term execution. It knew how to reduce costs, win price battles, manufacture memorable machines, and attract passionate users. It struggled to maintain stable leadership, healthy margins, clear product transitions, developer confidence, strong marketing, and a unified platform strategy. Jack Tramiel's aggressive methods helped create Commodore's success and some of its weaknesses. His departure removed a decisive leader, but did not automatically doom the company. Irving Gould and later executives made consequential choices, but no single person explained every failure. The Amiga was genuinely advanced, but advanced technology alone could not guarantee victory. Compatible personal computers and game consoles created enormous external pressure, but Commodore's internal confusion made that pressure far more destructive. Its competitors did not need to defeat every Commodore machine in every category. They needed to offer a future that customers, developers, retailers, and businesses believed would still exist several years later. Commodore could sell hardware. It could not consistently sell that confidence. After the collapse, the company's assets, patents, brands, and Amiga rights passed through different owners. The original organization never returned to its former position. Yet Commodore's culture did not disappear. The Commodore 64 remained a symbol of accessible home computing. Its sound chip continued inspiring musicians. Its games, demos, magazines, user groups, and bedroom programmers became part of computing history. The Amiga community refused to behave like the platform was dead. Users repaired machines, designed new accessories, wrote software, created demos, composed music, preserved games, and imagined paths the computer might have taken. Retro computing events still bring these systems into public view. New hardware and emulation projects keep old software running. People continue arguing about what Commodore could have become because the machines made their unrealized future feel visible. The nostalgia is not only for beige plastic, floppy disks, loading sounds, or joysticks. It is nostalgia for a period when the rules of personal computing still seemed open. A teenager with a television, keyboard and magazine could feel close to the machine. The boundary between player, user, programmer, musician, and creator was thin. A computer did not merely deliver finished experiences, it invited curiosity. In early 1984, Commodore appeared to have won. It had helped move computers away from laboratories, offices, and wealthy enthusiasts and into ordinary homes. But its greatest victory encouraged the belief that the methods that created one era could control the next. They could not. The price war that displayed Commodore's power weakened margins and relationships. The culture that demanded control produced internal conflict. The old machines that generated cash made transition harder. The advanced machine that might have defined a new era never received the coherent strategy it needed. Jack Tramiel's mission succeeded beyond Commodore itself. Computing became affordable. Games became a major industry. Programming entered bedrooms. Digital creativity became personal. The world Commodore wanted arrived. Commodore simply did not remain strong enough to control it. Technology history is not decided only by who invents the best machine, builds the lowest cost product, or reaches the future first. It is also decided by who can explain that future, finance it, support it, improve it, and give people confidence that it will still be there tomorrow. Commodore was not destroyed by a lack of imagination. It was destroyed by its inability to build a stable company around the futures it imagined.